Haven't heard from anybody else.
Good in the back? I'd like to open the Select Board meeting of November 28, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing to honor our troops both here and abroad, past and present. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Tattlebaum and Mr. Gracie are on Zoom. For those of you that would like to know who's here, we're all here, one way or another. We've signed the warrant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have an so I have to open up a hearing for the tax reclassification.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we open the tax reclassification hearing for FY
And I second that.
2023.
Motion to open in a second. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
while we have two members here on via Zoom, I request that this be a roll call vote.
Right, that's what all right, so roll call vote. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Well, it's
Mrs.
not the
Brooks?
same as one
Yes.
of the times Melanie sent to me.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
It's not the same number as one of the ones Melanie sent to me
Hello?
a couple of meetings ago.
David?
Mike, you there?
We're opening the hearing for the tax reclass. So we need a roll call vote, so yes or no? Yes or no? We just had a motion and a second, so we need a vote.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Just started.
Because we have two members at home on hybrid, where I've made a motion to do roll call votes for the tax reclassification hearing. So I voted yes. The chairman is calling on you, Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson says yes. Okay. So we have the hearing is open. So Gary, would you like to explain the role?
I don't have a video feed yet.
Nor do I.
Oh.
Hold on. Let's get him video feed, please.
Got it.
You have it now?
Yes. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All set here.
Mr. Gracie, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Carrero.
So thank you for having me tonight. The board, as you know, each year at this time, we're looking to have the tax rate certified by not only the Board of Assessors and the Department of Revenue, so that my office can then put out the bills in a timely fashion before December 31st. So just I'll read you some notes that the board has submitted, and so for the residents at home, they have some information on what this process is. The purpose of the tax classification area is set to the minimum residential factor. The Board of Selectmen choose the small commercial business exemption of 10%. They must also choose that factor at this meeting. The FY23 new growth of $925,981 is tax dollar amount. Residential new growth was $249,028. Commercial new growth $39,805. Industrial new growth $147,589, and personal property $489,559. The town's total assessed value as of FY23 is $7,227,020,762. The value increased 10.46% from the last year's value of $6,542,394,572. The last year's taxable levy was $69,890,492. $584. This year's tax year levy is increased to $72,508,201. The residential class increased 10.46%, and the commercial class increased 1.2%. It's important to note that during this hearing, the Select Board is setting the minimum residential factor. The Select Board is also choosing the small commercial exemption. The minimum residential factor last year was 86.6550, and the CIP shift commercial industrial was 1.63. So at this hearing, the Board of Assessors has supplied you with some scenarios. Some on local businesses, I don't know if it may be prudent to look at that, but the most important is the classification hearing that you see here, and their recommendation is the 1.75 factor, which the residential rate would be $8.78 per thousand. The commercial industrial will be $17.62. This is on a median value home of
What is that again, Gary? 17 what?
$17.62.
Okay.
This is on a median value home of $421,000 and commercial property of $506,000. So that would mean, and I know it's important that the Select Board would like to hear this, what does that do to your tax bill? So the taxes for FY 2022, for instance, was $35.85.34 on the median value home. That will increase to $36.96.38, a difference of $111.04, resulting in a 3.10 percent change. On commercial industrial, the rate for fiscal year 22 was $8,773.21. That will now increase to $8,915.72, a difference of $142.51, which is a 1.62% increase. And it's important to know that these are median values, so there are obviously values that are a lot higher, a lot lower. So the Board of Assessors felt that the 175 would be the max rate and be most beneficial to the town, and beneficial to the resident also, as the burden wouldn't be so much on the resident. The next page just talks about trends and where we've seen the median value go from FY17 to FY22. Obviously, it's increased as properties also, the values increase. The Board is aware that the values of the homes for taxable purposes would increase also.
So we close the hearing?
Well-
Yes, you
Question?
So-
unless you have questions.
Yeah, all right. Mrs. Brooks?
No, I think the data was very
Donald, anything to say?
self-explanatory.
Till I open the discussion?
So the assessors are recommending a 1.75
Correct.
shift, or
Yeah.
whatever you
rate.
want to call it,
Yeah,
factor.
yes, factor.
Okay, and of course, the 10% small business exemption, yes. Okay. So any other factor that they have produced would have resulted anywhere from just a 3.68 change to an 8% change in the residential increase, and all the others would be a decrease in commercial. So this is the only factor where there is an increase in both the residential and the commercial, and the residential factor is actually smaller, it's the smallest, at 3.1. And that would put the residential tax rate at 8.78, which is generally one of the lower tax rates in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I know the analysis is done, Richard Gonzalez, who's the assessor now, well, filling in, he does an analysis with other communities, and I know if you looked at last year's tax rate, he did communities like Fall River, Seekonk, Swansea, and it's still, even though our rate is not, we don't have the factors like the yeah, right.
The multiples.
So we were still the lowest out of those communities.
Yeah,
I have a
mean,
question.
Yes. Go ahead. Mr. Gracie, go right ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to know if the 1.75 is as high as it goes.
Correct.
Yes, that is the max.
Okay. Thanks.
Question here?
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gary. Could you comment, clarify, the residential class increased by 10.4%, and that was due to the reevaluations?
I don't know if the board wants to speak on that. Want to speak on
No, the revaluation hasn't been done
that?
yet.
The reval isn't going to be in the process of being done, where we haven't really done that. I think it's mainly a factor of sales and in the town having increased and so forth and so on. But we're in the process of working on a reval.
Correct.
A lot of that is market-driven, too.
Right. So this is strictly a marketplace increase, not to do with reevaluation as of this.
There are many revals that are done throughout the year, throughout the course of each year, but the major reval has not been completed. It will be done.
Do we have a time frame?
That's going to be done in
Issued the RFP, it's
Yeah.
out, we're waiting for responses.
Is this the 3-year or the 5-year?
It's a 5-year.
This is the 5-year?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? You want me to close the hearing?
Yes.
I'm going to close the hearing. Mr. McDonald?
Oh.
Excuse me, Chair. In this, during the meeting, I would assume during the meeting, do you adopt?
Do you want to come up, Kevin?
Kevin Santos, Assessor, Town of Dartmouth, Board of Assessors. So you need to adopt, I don't know if you have, because we just walked in, the fact that the minimum residential 10%.
Yep.
Did you already do that? Okay.
They're
Yeah,
gonna take
we
it
have
up
it.
right now.
All right, just making sure, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you did or not, all right.
No, that's why I want to close it, then we can vote on it. So I'm going to close the hearing. Mr. McDonald?
Make a motion that we adopt the 1.75 rate as recommended by the Board of Assessors, and to also adopt the 10% small business exemption.
Second that.
Okay, we have a recommendation and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. So we have adopted the 1.75 residential rate, and which would be 8.78 per 1,000, and the CNI rate 17.62, which the change would be on the residential side 3.10%, and on the commercial side 1.62%, and of course
On a median value.
the
Make sure
median value,
it's the median value.
and the 10% exemption on small businesses.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
what they're gonna want is the minimum residential factor, which is 87.5342.
Correct.
Yeah. $87.532, correct.
342.
42.
Yes, all right.
42.
Okay. So, we're done, right? Thank you.
You took the vote? You took the vote?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, next, this period, so last year was for residential, was at $8.78 per the thousand.
Mhm.
This year it's gonna go up to the $9.47 to the thousand, and the commercial was last year $17.48 per the thousand, it's gonna go up to $17.62 per the thousand. But also, this is the last year that you can actually raise that commercial to 1.75, which always took some of the burden off of the residential. Next year, you don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, but I think we're looking, trying to help out both parties, and try to make this as equal as possible, especially during these tough times. People own homes that, they're gonna have to pay taxes. We're trying to keep that lower, as low as possible, and also to support our businesses that help run our town. So I believe this, to me, is probably the fairest factor that we have as an option. And 1.75 is the highest we can go. Right,
Unfortunately, this year we had 800,000 in growth.
yeah.
Hopefully we can get that next year.
Well, we'll see. We hope so.
Mr. Mickelson?
Yes, sir, Mr. Tattlebaum.
One quick question, if I may. And the new growth categories that Gary read off, is this similar to what it's been in the past, ratio-wise, or is there a decided difference?
It's similar ratio-wise. The personal property is higher. That's mostly from solar revenue, but generally that's the split.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, I guess we're done. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you to the Board of Assessors for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Just,
It's a tough
while
decision.
we have,
every
actually,
year.
while we have the board here, where are we on getting a new director of assessing? Okay, just by that little, I guess we're not.
I can update you on that.
Okay.
So we've had the position advertised for quite some time. If you look statewide, there's a drastic shortage of assessors. We have not had any applicants that meet the criteria of the job description. This is a union position in town. The job description cannot be changed without bargaining. We do have some applicants recently, and we review them on a rolling basis. At the same time, too, we're also looking at outsourcing some of the assessing functions to a contract service to provide some basic assessing functions if we're unable to fulfill the position. So Gary and I meet regularly to discuss this. We've updated the board about this process, so we're pulling together numbers for contracting the services, and we're also continue to look at applicants as well. So if things change, we will present them, as soon as we have the information.
Unfortunately, it's basically, like the town administrator said, Sean, it's really hard. It's difficult. You have not only the town of Dartmouth, but other communities wanting for the same, going for the same position. But there's other communities that offer a lot more money. And, I mean, we've had, if we could have paid more, we probably could have had someone in here. But, we're limited. It's a union position, and we're very limited. If it was not a union position, then it would be, okay, the highest bidder could get the, possibly, a good individual assessor or not. But, we're competing against a union position. Not that I'm against unions, I'm not, but it puts us in a, pretty much a bad position.
Right.
So it is
Plus,
what it
there's
is.
a lot of poaching going on, too, so.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, we had an assessor in here, he lasted 1 month. Right, Sean? I mean, we worked at it, Sean worked at it. We had 2 meetings with him, and then someone poached him.
Yeah, it
After
happens
1
all-
month.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, it's just, it's
Because-
painful. The painful situation will be if we have to outsource.
Right.
Because outsource will cost us a lot more money than having an administrative assistant. I mean, it could have cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars more. So that's why I wish it wasn't in part of the union, because instead of offering someone, say, 80 to 100, or we could offer more, and it would save us on the long end of not being at the mercy of subcontractors, which is going to be, as Sean might, knows, it's going to be expensive.
Right. Is there any way we can nail Richard's foot to his desk? Keep him here?
Just missed it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're trying.
Okay.
Well, we'll find somebody.
Sean,
Unfortunately, we are
Doing the best we can.
we are at a very big disadvantage.
And this has been for a year and a half.
Mhm.
A year and a half, so.
Mr. Misha.
Bob Michaud calling, speaking. I think what we have to do is recognize the fact that if we want to get somewhere, we have probably 6 months with Richard Gonzalez before he's gone. And I believe we have to train someone. And in 6 months, I would say that 85% of what that person has to know would know that much. In the 15% that person is not capable of yet, would probably go for, outside help, bring in somebody to do that. I think if we just keep talking about, sending out questionnaires and who wants to come to work for us and stuff, I think we have somebody in our office now who's capable of taking that job and would take it, the training and the 6 courses that they have to take to, become an assessor. I think that's something we should really consider. I don't know who has the last voice in who we pick. In other words, who gets the job? Is it the assessor's office, that talks to the people and knows what they know and their abilities versus someone coming in with a fancy resume but doesn't make the job after. So that's a concern I have, is that I think we have somebody in our office now that if we would have started with that person 6 months ago, a year ago, when we first started looking, they'd be an assessor today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Okay, thank you. New business. Response to DEP Title V update and public meeting. Christopher, please.
Yes, just to update the board. So, Chris can come up. So, as you know, Chris Michaud was here a month or 2 ago to talk about proposed changes to Mass DEP's Title V regulations. Since that time, they've come out with their draft regulations, and Chris has had 2 public meetings last week. But we wanted him to come before the board to give an update on that and also talk about drafting a response to DEP on behalf of the town.
Thank you. Christopher Michaud, Director of Public Health for the town of Dartmouth. So we had a meeting last week, and we have another one scheduled for tomorrow. After tomorrow, the first public hearing begins in Lakeville, followed by all virtual the following day, and next week one in Barnstable. The information is posted on our website about the links to attend the public hearings virtually, where to go, the times, and when the comment period ends later in December. I believe it was December 16th. A little bit foggy on that because right now what we're looking at are records. These are records that have been extracted from other records that I've been requesting from the department, MDR, Administration and Finance, beginning on August 30th of 2022. The most substantive request that I made to the department on August 30th was responded to at the end of the business day, actually a little bit after the business day, but still within the 10-day window, on September 14th. They hit me with it's going to cost you $150 to produce these records. I promptly wrote a personal check so as to get this going quickly, sent it off by certified mail, and they had it within a week. On August 25th, I got an email from Mass DEP saying, "We're working on it and you'll have your records shortly." They never requested an extension from Mass DEP, so when the time they got my original request, I should have had those records back within 10 days without, requesting an extension from the Secretary of State. So finally, on November 15th, I filed an appeal with the Secretary of State. They have not responded to that appeal. The records that I requested that have not been produced yet are records that are intriguing to me because they tie to this NSA. And that's not the National Security Agency that should be shrouded in secrecy. The NSA is the Nitrogen Sensitive Area Subcommittee that was tasked with coming up with these ideas that are coming to public hearing in just about 48 hours. What's also troubling about that, and I've since done another records request within the last about 7 or 8 business days, is that when asked who are the individuals that are on this subcommittee, Mass DEP said, file a records request. I also asked, what input did you seek from Buzzards Bay area? because we're vastly different than the Cape, than the islands. Our geology is different, and you can't use this one-size-fits-all that they're using for the Cape. I was told that the Buzzards Bay Coalition was the representative to Buzzards Bay communities. Not a municipality, but a nonprofit activist. If you're going to have a well-rounded subcommittee, then there should have at least been one or more communities. And the two largest communities, Westport and Dartmouth in Buzzards Bay, were omitted from that. But that's just based on their testimony in a meeting that we have a soundbite of. And I'm still waiting on an extraordinary amount of information. And based on my most recent records request, I doubt that I'll have it in time by the close of the comment period. So it's deeply troubling how fast we're moving with this process as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to promulgate regulations which are laced with so much uncertainty. The only thing I can be certain about these regulations is the uncertainty, unless you look to the 5-year approach, which sounds pretty drastic for residents that are living in these impacted areas that occupy probably the vast acreage of Dartmouth in the unsewered areas. We also know that they're studying the Apponeganset Bay watershed, and that the preliminary results, at least as reported by the state, is showing impairment. So at some point in time, we may be looking at yet another aspect. Fortunately, that watershed is mostly sewered. So with all of these records that you see here, and I'm not going to bore you to death because I know I'm long-winded, and you're probably saying, oh my God, he's going to be here until tomorrow. That just demonstrates a lot of the concerns that we have with this overall. And we're going to, let the public know about some of these concerns tomorrow. We're going to assemble our letter from the health department. I cannot thank Mr. Almy and the Board of Public Works enough, who has been almost in daily contact with me on this matter, because this really is an all-hands-on-deck approach. What I fear the most in all of this is complacency. This is being done during a very strategic time frame by Mass DEP. Put it right between the holidays. Nice way to get it through a distracted public. People will rely on their neighbors or someone else, or that my voice won't make a difference. I say absolutely not. You need to let your state elected officials know how this is going to impact you, because this will have an impact beyond the environment. We're doing this strictly from the focus of looking at restoring the ecological health of this river, or rivers, I should say, in watersheds, with complete ignorance and disregard to the public health implications on pulling more money out of households in this area. We are going to remove money from people's ability to heat their homes that are already plagued with $5 and something cents heating oil. That was half that last year. Prescription high deductible insurance, electricity, food. The state tries to sweeten this by saying, we'll loan you money. Loan is more debt. We have seniors living in these areas. This is a short-sighted approach by Mass DEP that is strictly an attempt to ward off a lawsuit by the Conservation Law Foundation. Because they've been asleep at the wheel and didn't put proactive measures long ago when they had concerns to onboard new construction if they really believed in this. But I've got records here that will be coming out that shows how asleep at the wheel the department has been. It has been disgraceful to the people of Dartmouth as well as to the Commonwealth. And hopefully, at the end of all this, our goal is that we can have a working balance. I'm not here to advocate for pollution. That is not our message at all. Some of this here will show that the department is complicit in pollution in these watersheds at the same time that the department is saying, oh, there's a problem.
The opposite.
I have it here. Hopefully within a week, our letter will be finalized. I've got Assistant Town Council Cruz sitting over there, so I'd like to yield, and thank you, unless there's any questions.
No, it's bleak. That's the problem.
What's that?
And the position we are in is bleak, to say the least, and I don't see it that easy to solve, to make it easier for our residents that are, especially the ones that are operating on minimal amount of money, some just with their Social Security check. It's embarrassing, and my heart goes out to these people.
It's an easy decision for the state to make as they sit in their, silos in Boston.
Yeah.
They're not connected to the people like we are. We know the consequences, and we were omitted from that process of being at the table as stakeholders. Municipalities, I'm not saying Dartmouth. We all should have been at this, and we were
They
omitted.
operate anyway. They've done this in the past with us, if you remember. This is not our first rodeo with this group. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very
I
much.
have a question.
Yes, Mr. Gracie.
Yes, Chris, how do you feel about the possibility of moving towards a direction where you ban nitrogen?
I missed part of that. I heard, how do you feel about nitrogen?
You've disappeared. I can't hear you.
I only heard, how do you feel about and nitrogen? I missed the rest.
Yeah, I was wondering, we could move in a direction of banning nitrogen fertilizers, and I'm wondering how you feel about that.
Thank you, Mr. Gracie. So nitrogen in the watersheds is not a one-size-fits-all. Dartmouth is a built-out community. Massachusetts is building out along the south coast. And to try to attack nitrogen from any single component is going to be a failure. Even to do it from septic systems, Mass DEP record that ties to these regulations early on in the process in 2018 said IA systems alone will not fix the problem. And that's what this whole thing is about. The 5-year mandate is you put in an IA system, but yet they admit that won't solve it. So going back to fertilizer, I believe trying to regulate fertilizer would be an extreme endeavor by a community because it would be an enforcement process. You have to prove that someone is violating that. You're going to need soil tests. You're going to need to know what they're putting down. You're looking at significant resources going into that. So essentially, when you're getting into managing fertilizers, it's going to be you should, because that's really all that government can do. Unless we're gonna go back to like the war rations, and you're gonna come to town hall and get your bag of fertilizer for the year.
Shameful.
Thank you.
Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Cruz, Assistant Town Council. Chris asked me to be here. I'm not going to talk about public policy implications or what DEP may or may not have said or done in the past or in the present. What I'm going to do is essentially give you the rundown on the town's options, assuming the proposed regulations as they currently stand are in fact passed and promulgated by DEP. Assuming that happens, there is an additional liability mandate that is being imposed by the state. The only question is whether or not that mandate is imposed on the homeowners individually or on the town as a whole. If it's the individuals, then each individual in about 90% of the town who has a septic system within 5 years, as Chris said, will have to upgrade. If otherwise, the other option is the town, and it would have to be the select board applies for a watershed permit from DEP, and they're promulgating an entirely new regulation for that watershed permit process. And then we would be obligated under that permit to take such steps as are necessary to result in, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 75% reduction in nitrogen over a 20-year period. And there'd be annual testing to confirm that. So and part of the problem with that is how would we go about doing that? Is it going to require town meeting approval of various bylaws? It's not entirely within the select board's control, even if you guys did go for a permit. If you did get a watershed permit, the other complicating factor is, under the regs as proposed, the town would thereafter be exposed to civil penalty liability for failure to comply with the permit, including monetary penalties as well as an administrative consent order. So that is liability that does not otherwise exist. What you are doing in getting that watershed permit is subjecting the town as a whole to the Massachusetts Clean Waters Act. And in doing so, what you are essentially agreeing to is that you are responsible for any discharge in the town that violates that act, and you can be penalized, you being the town, for allowing any such discharge. So that is liability that doesn't otherwise exist. You would be accepting it in exchange for not requiring individual homeowners to upgrade their systems within 5 years. So that is the horrible choice that's being faced. Does the town accept that liability, or are the individual homeowners accepting that liability? If the individual homeowners if the town does nothing and the individual homeowners have that liability to improve their systems within 5 years, the town is then going to face a massive enforcement issue, because you're going to have hundreds of systems each year that are going to have to come in compliance. And if people aren't doing that because they can't afford to, then the Board of Health is going to be busy doing enforcement work. Title V enforcement can only be done in Superior Court, can't be done in Housing Court. Superior Court is expensive. We're looking at legal fees. And so the Board of Health is going to have to prioritize where it does its enforcement. I don't think this is anything DEP has really thought through very well, given, the systemic results that are going to happen. My legal advice would be, I don't see how the town can accept the liability of taking a watershed permit. And the main reason is because DEP has not, in the watershed permit regulations, fleshed out in detail at all what the obligations will be under that permit. And it seems from the way they've drafted the regs, they could modify those obligations subsequent to accepting the permit. So you could you could apply for and accept the permit under a specific set of criteria you're thinking is going to happen, and subsequently they can say, well, the annual testing shows X, Y, Z, so now you have to do this instead. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be subject to penalty. And that just can't be anticipated because they've left the regs broad enough that they can make any decision they want to after the fact. So if you applied for and obtained that watershed permit, I have no idea what will happen 5-10 years from now. It's completely unknown. It's not even clear what you would be required to do at the outset, quite honestly. There's no way to anticipate the full scope of liability the town would be subject to if it accepted that watershed permit. And again, that would be liability that would not otherwise exist. You are voluntarily subjecting the town to being an enforcing authority under the Clean Waters Act when it otherwise isn't. The purpose would be to alleviate the homeowner burden, but I just don't know what the consequence would be if you did so.
Yes, Mr. McDonald.
Could you categorize this as an unfunded mandate?
It is a post facto obligation upon the homeowners. Whether or not any individual homeowner could successfully argue that the regulation is, improper insofar as it requires them to do something after the fact, even if their system isn't failing. Unfortunately, that's not an argument the town can make. Mm-hmm. That would be up to some individual homeowner and their enterprising attorney. And in fact, because the town is the enforcing authority under Title V, we will be obligated to assert that the regulation is valid in the Enforcing Act. So whether there's no unfunded mandate to the town, because the town isn't obligated to do anything other than enforce Title V. Anything it does beyond that to alleviate anything on the homeowner is a voluntary act by the town.
What the DEP is proposing, what if the town doesn't enforce Title V?
So the Board of Health under, I'm going to make sure I get the statute right before I say something on public TV. Under Chapter 21A, Section 13, is obligated, it says shall enforce Title V. It is it is the statutorily designated agent of DEP locally for Title V purposes. That being said, if the Board of Health does not enforce Title V in a particular instance for whatever reason, including just because of resource management, then under the statute, DEP would have the option to enforce directly. DEP cannot enforce Title V except for in the absence of the Board of Health doing so. So, as I said, any enforcing authority is always making discretionary calls on enforcement due to resource management and what the worst case is versus, how many resources they have to bring enforcement actions. So Chris is anticipating, depending on how many people comply, if this passes, it could possibly be hundreds of enforcement actions a year.
So basically, what the town and its citizens are up against is death by 1,000 cuts with lemon or death by 1,000 cuts with lime.
As I said, this is basically two really bad choices.
All right, so
no
let's
way around
switch gears now. The requests for information by the Board of Health that has not been given up by DEP, what do you need from this board for you to pursue the information?
So I have not seen the requests. I do not know the specific status of them vis-a-vis the Supervisor of Public Records, which is the designated official within the Secretary of Commonwealth's office who handles public records appeals. So I don't know whether or not it's at the point at which it would be litigation. It would be, as Chris was the records requester, it would ultimately be up to the Board of Health whether or not to pursue that records request further. So I'm not trying to avoid the question. I just don't have enough information to know where we are.
I get what you get. I understand Chris being the Director of Board of Health, and the Board of Health would have to authorize him to go forward, but it's through anything through Town Council has to come through this board. Because my understanding is the information that Mr. Michaud had requested, they said never existed, and then when he expounded upon that request, they said, sue us. So the information does exist, but they're not giving it up,
So, and I go back to, I don't know whether or not the appeals process before the Supervisor of Public Records has been exhausted. So that's why I don't know if it's at the point at which a lawsuit would be the only way to get the records. I don't know enough about the records request history to know whether or not that's the case.
Let me ask this question. Would a motion from this board authorizing you to work with the Board of Health and the Director of Board and Health in pursuing these record requests work for you?
So, my feeling would be that anything involving the Supervisor of Public Records Office is within the scope of our ability to advise the Board of Health already. To the extent there would be a lawsuit to seek the records, then a vote from this board would be necessary. The Board of Health has the right to initiate litigation on its own when it comes to enforcement. It's unclear to me, and I would doubt whether they could with respect to a records request absent this board authorizing it. So that would be useful. But again, I don't know where we are at this point.
All right, so my initial thought on this would be, number one, to suggest that Town Council and the Assistant Town Council work with the Board of Health and the Assistant and the Director of Board of Health in reviewing the requests for the information from the state record holders and Mass DEP. And that should, our next meeting is what, 2 weeks?
No, next week.
Next week. Okay, well, that would put it under the gun, which is fine, because I know, Brian, you like to work under pressure.
Yes, thank you.
And that by next week, we should be able to bring forward any requests to utilize Town Council in litigation purposes to seek these record requests. So if we could have that on the agenda for next week, and just give us an update on that. I'd like to see, where we're going, see if it is a possibility on number one on that. What I'm also going to request is I'm going to request that this board forward a letter to Representative Markey to Senator Montigny, request their assistance in contacting Mass DEP to extend commenting period until June 1st of 2023, and to withhold implementation of these regulations until January 1, 2024. And that part of this request is also to have this board, this office, contact other municipalities in the watersheds of the state of Massachusetts, and that they request to do the same.
So generally speaking.
That's a motion, by the way.
Okay, so we need I'll have to second it. Somebody
No,
can.
they can second it. Frank or
Frank
David
or
can
Dave,
second
you
it
wanna
if they want.
second it? David, yes? We have a second? Yes, David Tattlebaum. Okay. Motion,
Did he second it?
yes, he did.
He's gonna speak, it's,
Yeah, Dave, you have to,
gotta say it, you
Second.
can't just
I
wait.
second. Sorry.
okay. So we have a motion favor and a second.
Discussion.
Any other discussion about this?
Yes.
David?
Do we, at this point, know of any towns, municipalities, or regions that have taken any action against this along in the watershed area?
As far as I know, Falmouth is up, Falmouth has got their backsides up on this. Whether or not they've done any kind of legal, I have no idea. But I know Falmouth is pretty much uptight about this, and I think there are some communities also on the Cape that are also in this, but I think it's time for the municipalities and the cities of this Commonwealth take a stand, because this is a knee-jerk reaction to that lawsuit from the Conservation Law Foundation. And this is an ill-advised, ill-prepared proposal, knee-jerk reaction from the state DEP that they're just throwing it out there. And they're going to see what sticks. And it's a lousy, onerous regulations.
Well, I also think that the letter, the towns and cities have also been guilty of dragging their feet as well. And as Mr. Michaud said before, but I also think that that we we need to make sure that our town in its entirety, be it the Board of Health and DPW is involved, has a strategy involved as well as we go forward as a team.
Well, that was, this is the thing, part and parcel of why I'm asking for them to keep the comment period open for longer than what they are, is that the information is not out there, and basically, this is going to be forced on the citizens of this Commonwealth without really them knowing what's going on. And the implementation ban until for at least a year would be enough to give the communities, the municipalities of the Commonwealth, to get together, to sit down with the state and figure out something reasonable and not draconian as it is. So, 356 communities need to band together. And that's why I'm asking this.
Well, Gary, yeah, you can come up. My thoughts also is I honestly think that this was well thought out. That they pushed our backs to the wall. They knew we would not accept, the town would not accept the responsibilities, and they forced the town to put the responsibility on the homeowners.
But it
was
still
well-
becomes a responsibility of the town with the enforcement.
But well thought out by them, unfortunately.
Well,
And I just would
well
like to
thought
just-
out. Well thought out on the
Well,
way
on
to
their part, on their
well thought out on how to screw the people of the community.
Well,
Yes,
but
that was well thought
But it
out.
wasn't ill-advised. They knew what they were doing. Guaranteed.
Question?
David?
I know Mr. McGinnis has been, was very involved in the Cape and these issues, and I hadn't had a chance of talking about it, but you see a groundswell of this kind of reaction as well to that, Sean?
Yes, definitely. I think you heard Select Board Member McDonald mention that Falmouth is pursuing the same route as Dartmouth.
But different topography.
Yes.
Very, very different.
Same issues, though.
Yes, but the same issues, correct.
Are you in favor of this motion, Sean?
Oh,
Can I just provide one?
A comment, Sean
Michaud.
oh,
McGinnis?
yes. Yes.
Mr. Michaud.
I just would like to make one point known. So a little earlier, I mentioned strategy. The strategy with these public hearings occurs during the busiest time. When we look at how these regs are targeting the Commonwealth, it's not across the 356 or 350 plus communities. Excuse me if I get the number wrong. It is against Cape Cod, the islands, South Coast, and Plymouth. The divide and conquer strategy. Because the overwhelming landscape of Massachusetts at this time is not impacted by these regulations. But as I talk to industry experts, and we talk about some of these great ponds of the Commonwealth, well, a great pond of the Commonwealth being defined as a natural resource area under these promulgated regulations being impaired could very well fit into these regs in the future. So those that are sitting by saying, not me, guess what?
It is you.
There are 23 watersheds in this state. All 23 cover this entire state. There isn't a portion of the state that is not in a watershed. So everybody in this state is going to be affected by these regulations someday.
I agree.
Yes, sir. You have the microphone.
I do now. Yes. My name is Robert Almy. While you were good enough to appoint me the chair of the Public Works Board, I'm not here tonight as that chair because the Public Works Board has not yet taken action on this. They will have it on their next agenda. They have an idea that this is coming. I also want to qualify myself. I received my professional geologist registration in 1979, and I've worked in 6 different states doing groundwater work, watershed assessments, worked on TMDLs, both as a regulator and as regulated, and I've held a number of public hearings and never closed a public comment period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Okay?
Well, you didn't work for the state.
I did for a while, and we wouldn't do it there. And when we were regional and cooperating with state and federal agencies, we wouldn't let them do it either. All right. So I got 4 points, and then I got a bunch of technical stuff that I won't bore you with tonight unless you're interested. However, the issue isn't whether local embayments are impaired. The issue is what will we do to improve them. The issue is really whether regulations designed for Cape Cod, and they are, clearly, are appropriate for mainland watersheds. They're not. The town and DEP and other local interests need time to work out an approach that makes sense. This is not it. I recommend, exactly as Selectman McDonald has recommended, a delay in the comment period, an engagement with the affected towns, and I think that that should come from the Select Board, the Board of Public Health, and I will also recommend it to the Board of Public Works. A couple of things on this that I think I want to share with you. First of all, if I understand correctly, the lawsuit in question has nothing to do with the town of Dartmouth except the spillover of bad regulations. In other words, we could bifurcate ourselves logically from that process. You guys want to do that over there? That's fine. Come and talk to us about what makes sense here. The geology of this area is very different than the geology of the Cape. I've done half a dozen jobs out there over the course of working for a consulting firm. I've done groundwater, surface water interactions, nitrate control, stormwater. I've done a bunch of stuff out there. I, as a professional, will tell you it's different. The hydrology of these watersheds is very different in a bunch of different ways. The focus of these regulations is inappropriate. We're talking septic systems, according to the TMDL, contribute 14% of the nitrogen load measured 16 to 20 years ago, let that sink in the Slocum River. Old data, a small fraction of the source, and these IA systems, these advanced systems, will take out, pick a number, 50% of the nitrogen, maybe. They are expensive to build, they're expensive to maintain, and they take energy, all right? So this is, there's a question about whether they are technically and economically feasible, all right? These regulations are arbitrary and they're capricious. They're arbitrary because the data sets that they're based on around here are incomplete. They're capricious because there's been no effort to develop an approach that makes sense. DEP is simply pulling this out of the air. All right? So we have, in conclusion, inadequate local consultation, no discussion of alternative approaches. The legal basis for the 20-year watershed plans, this feels real sketchy to me. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that the rules can change. I don't like that they have to be renewed, and there seems to be nothing out there at the end of these permits. The existing regulatory framework for controlling other sources of nitrogen feels to me, from what I've understood, inadequate and needs upgrading. Composting is probably a good example. If we're going to get into nutrient management, residential nutrient management is usually done with social changes. I've run programs like that. Water conservation, nutrient management, that has to be done at the local level. You got to convince the folks in the community that they want to be more careful. You can't do it with regulations. Same thing with golf courses, same thing with agriculture. Golf courses and agriculture, you got a slightly different argument. It's good for your pocketbook. That's usually what will make them pay attention. And finally, there are state highways and the airport that are hard surfaces and contribute significant amounts of nitrogen, according to the TMDL, and they don't seem to be included. And I haven't heard much from our surrounding towns. We've got, I think, 4 in the Slocum watershed. This is not just Dartmouth's problems. So anyway, the extension is the right thing to do, and I think that request should come from your board, Board of Public Health, Public Works Board, maybe from the Conservation Commission. Anyway, thank you.
And our representatives.
Pardon?
And our representatives.
Correct. And anybody else we can get to send a similar letter. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Tell me, you're always on button. Really, thank you.
Hence my motion.
Okay, we had a second before Mrs. Brooks had to leave.
Mr. Tattlebaum seconded the motion.
I second.
Okay, so we're going to vote on that?
I want to, I request a roll call vote because of now we have 2-2.
Right, that's going to, okay. So, Mr. McDonald?
Hell yes.
Okay, Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, of course, yes, and Mrs. Brooks had to leave. Motion passes.
If we can get that out as soon as possible, Mr. McGinnis, that'd be greatly appreciated. Can you CC us
Yes.
on everything, please?
Mr. Elmy, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
I didn't hear, who's that?
David.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yeah, I just would like to, something that I had said at the hearing that Mr. Michaud presented the other night. He gave a really comprehensive, quality, understandable hearing. And it reminded me of the team effort it took once COVID started way back when. We took the best minds and the best departments in town and really put a consensus, all of which was put together and organized by Mr. Michaud. And this is another essence, the way he stepped forward and told us the problem. And how someone like Mr. Almy coming forward, we have some unbelievably qualified people with interest in town. But we make sure we get a consensus of all these different committees and towns and people. We stand forward, find our, get Mr. Markey and Mr. Digby involved, and we can put a consensus together. We stand straight forward and totally in line to what we're going to do. And if other towns want to join us, great, because we're going to do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Almy, they're going to vote on, the board's going to vote on that?
Yes, our next meeting is 2 weeks, I believe, just before the close of public hearing.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay, under new business, credit card policy.
Yes, Gary Carrero, our interim director of budget and finance, is here to talk to the board about our internal credit card policy. Thought he'd update the board on this new policy.
Thanks again, members of the board, for having me. So when I took the position, when I was appointed the position, rather, for interim director of finance, treasurer, the town historically had used the credit card in the past, and there really was no process in place to have the tracking of what was spent and whatnot internally. So we developed myself and our assistant treasurer developed a process where if the card is taken out now, it's being signed out when we're knowing what the purchase is immediately. So what I wanted to do was kind of button this up a little bit in the form of a policy where we identify what really the town credit card is supposed to be used for. It's really for emergency purposes, and where the warrant process cannot be utilized. As you know, the warrant process is for any expenses as the board signs on a weekly basis, and that should be the only means of paying a bill in town. This is just for any kind of purchases that are above and beyond that. And we've listed some examples here under the policy section. I've included what the purpose of this is. The policy just, as again, goes through some of the items that can be charged. Procedure, what we're expecting from the towns that utilize the credit card. It's open to every single department in town. We hold it in the vault in the treasurer's office. My name is on it, including with the town of Dartmouth's name. And then what would happen in case of any activity that is fraudulent on the card, and that we do, on occasion, we could audit it, and also the external auditors could go ahead and pull receipts and utilize their process to check for any inconsistencies. So this, as again, just buttons it up. It makes it official, if you will, so that and we brought this up at the department head meetings that we were looking to do this, and just ties it into what we've already done internally.
So what I might add to this
Sure.
is there might be some time where they'll use one card and they'll be at a meeting. The P cards that I have in my company, you have to name the people that were at the meetings, even though they're not paying for it, but they were part of that. It's a really good way to just put that expenditure in place, and all the players are involved that should be on that slip, and that goes in when you put
Submit
in
it for payment.
When you submit your
Yeah.
payment, right?
Yeah, we can certainly do that once we adopt this and make that as part of the policy, so that when folks are maybe attending meetings that they need to do that in advance, that they list who's going to be attending the meeting, and items like that. So when the receipt does come back to us for payment, we can match it up to the credit card statement, basically.
Yep. And do they take a picture of the receipt, or do they bring in the original receipt?
Well, the original receipts have to be brought in at the time when they sign the card back in, and that's submitted, and it's actually scanned into our Munis financial software system, where we've had that for I guess a couple of years now, where we scan all vouchers in and receipts, so that we're not generating a lot of paper. But that's all done at the time of purchase, and we're monitoring it now downstairs, where before it was kind of, you didn't know who had the card. The statement would come in. There was charges on there that were really, we'd have to search who made the charge. So it's a little bit cleaner now.
Yeah.
But we could certainly add that to the
I wonder, you might want to talk to this company, whoever it may be.
Bristol County Savings Bank. So we do business with.
Do they have the capabilities of? I could take a picture of the receipt, and can we send that in with the P card? So I don't have to actually have the paper in my hand.
Yeah, we could do that, send it attach it as a file and submit it, yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that's exactly how we
Right,
do it.
right, yeah.
So, I mean, I have the hard copies, but it's not necessary.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
Proof of an expenditure.
Yeah, as long as we have proof that it was, yeah.
Right.
Generally, most of what's purchased with the credit card is supplies and materials, not a lot of expenses where we would be purchasing food. It's actually minimal, so most of it is just, sometimes you come across a vendor that only takes credit cards nowadays, so this is to set that
Almost
policy.
all of them.
Yes.
So, one more thing, just so I get my hands around this. Are these credit cards in the hands of some of our people now?
We only have one credit card. We actually have two credit cards. One is in the hands of Recreation.
Yep.
One sits in, and it's vaulted so that it's secure.
So you go
And-
to, and you pick it up to use it?
Yes, and then one is in the treasurer's office. Same process; they have to sign it out. And I think a few years ago, the reason why they did it with the bucket, for instance, is they utilize it for that. Sometimes they run out of food. They have they have to go out in an emergency situation and purchase more supplies.
Right.
But the one that's here internally is tracked in the office downstairs, and
So we have really good control.
yes.
Yeah. Do we have to vote on this?
No.
No, this is just an update.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yeah,
great,
perfect,
yeah.
yeah.
Moving into the next generation. Mr. Haddad, energy aggregation update.
Good evening. So with the rising energy costs, we thought it would be helpful to provide an update on Dartmouth's community electricity aggregation. So just to give a little bit of background, the program was launched in Dartmouth in January of 2016. The current rate through the aggregation is 10.47 cents per kWh. That rate is locked in until December 30th, 2023. The Eversource rate changes every 6 months. It's currently 17.87 cents, and on January 1st, that'll go up to 25.65. To give you some perspective, National Grid is currently 33.89 cents for the supply portion. Wow. So through September of 2022, Dartmouth residents have saved approximately $8.5 million by enrolling in this program. $4 million of that has occurred just in the past year. And if you take an average household, uses about 700 kWh per month. Under the aggregation, they'd pay about $73 for the supply portion of their electric. With Eversource's new rate, if they were on that, they would pay $179. So savings of $106 a month for the average household. So $1,200 a year. The current, like I had said, the current rate is locked in until the end of 2023. We locked in at a very good time with that 10.47 cents. We don't anticipate we'll get as good of a rate when we go to renew the contract, but we've started the renewal process. We met with the Good Energy representative last week, and we'll look to bid out the electricity sometime between March and May. And basically what we'll likely do is we'll decide on a rate that we feel is fair and a good market value. And if at any point they get a rate that is at that or below, we'll give them our authorization to sign us on to that. So it's hard to tell what that'll be, but we are at least locked in until the end of 2023. And if anyone is interested in signing up, they can go to the town's website under the aggregation page, or they can call, it's 844-627-7232. And if there are any additional questions, they can contact the select board office, and we're more than happy to help.
We got in at the right time. Mr. McDonald?
Mr. Haddad, do we track how many new signups we have?
We likely could. I can tell you right now, total households is close to 11,000 total households in Dartmouth, so it's a majority of the community. I have received a significant uptick in calls looking to join the program, those who aren't. So we can request some data maybe at the end of this year and see what the increase
Because I'm wondering, because there was some requests on social media, and I had pointed people to this direction to contact, take a look at it and whatnot. So there has been some I guess, people looking for the information on social media pointed them in this right direction. My question, the other part of the question is tracking new, but those people who leave. Whether or not depends upon the circumstances, but I would be very comfortable in saying the majority of the people who leave are because of some kind of solicitation in the mails that their rate is going to be good, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, they're getting whacked. I'm wondering if there's a way to keep a track of those people and say, look, what was the reason that you left?
Yeah, we can certainly reach out to Good Energy and see if we can get that information. What you saw maybe a year ago was the aggregation rate and the Eversource rate, they were pretty close. So ours was 10.47, Eversource was last summer 11.5. So you still saved, but it wasn't significant. So in Massachusetts, you can procure your own electricity through various suppliers. So there would be suppliers that would offer a 3-month rate of 8 cents maybe. And then after that 3 months, you went up to, I actually got a call last week and somebody was paying 36 cents per kWh.
Defined print.
Yeah, through one of those programs.
Buyer beware.
Yeah, so what we like to say is the only, you shouldn't receive anything from Good Energy unless we start a new contract, but you'll know it's from Good Energy in the town. It'll have the town seal on it. That's how you know it's been vetted, it's part of the aggregation. If it doesn't have the town seal on it, it's not part of the aggregation.
And that's one of the things that I try to stress on social media. If you're getting something in the mail saying, hey, we got this, it's not the town, stay away from it. So, okay, all right.
Yeah, so, but I can't, this is one of the best rates in the state. There's several aggregations in the state with communities, and we locked in really at the right time. The Easton is part of an aggregation, and I think they're 18 cents, so 8 cents more than us, almost double, and that's still cheaper than the Eversource rate.
We were lucky with the uptick of the cost of energy for the last few months. We really lucked out. That's why you see such a great savings at this point. I don't think it'll continue at those numbers, but we will have the savings.
Yeah, probably not that high, but I do. There's typically a savings over a longer period.
Without a doubt. Yep.
Yeah. One thing to mention: residents are in the aggregation contract by default, so they have to opt out with Eversource. So if they're wondering if they're in it by default.
And if you look on your electricity bill, it'll say electricity supplier, and it should say Constellation Energy, Dartmouth CEA.
Right.
So if you look at your Eversource bill and it says that, then you're part of the program. If it doesn't, you can join the program.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yep. Sorry. Mr. Gracie.
Yes, I'm confused, so I need a little clarification. My rates have gone up dramatically over the last few months. And how is that possible when you're locked into a contract?
You may not be part of the electricity aggregation. So if you look at your Eversource bill and where it says supplier, if it says Dartmouth CEA, you're part of the aggregation. If you're not, you can call that phone number or call the select board office and we can assist you. But this is just for the supply. The delivery has actually stayed pretty flat. So if your usage is the same, my guess would be that you're not on the aggregation.
Well, I never opted out.
Yeah.
It could be the delivery, Frank, because the one thing that the aggregation doesn't control is the delivery, and that is separate from itself. The delivery is Eversource, no matter who you join. So, I mean, you could be, Bob's Electric could be a supplier, but Eversource is your delivery. And that's where the, some of the rates have gone up. I'm not going to say it's flat, but they haven't gone crazy, but they have increased.
Well, my rates have about doubled.
Yeah, so look at your electricity usage. You may be using more, and if you're not using more, then I'm guessing you're not part of the aggregation because this is locked in for 3 years. So take a look at that, and if you're not, you can join the aggregation.
Okay.
Check to see if one of your neighbors have kind of plugged into your outdoor outlets.
Yeah.
See if they're energizing their house
Gas
through
station's
you.
doing it.
But yeah, a double, yeah, Frank, there's something going on. If it's double, there's something
Gas
really going
station's
on with
plugged in.
your house. You need to have it checked.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next, Native American resident input media release.
Yes, as the board knows, there's a internal team formed of municipal and school officials to review the culture, history, and diversity of Indigenous people in town. The team is seeking the collaboration and input from Dartmouth's Native American residents in order to become educated in culture, history, and diversity of Indigenous peoples of Dartmouth. We're seeking those residents to come forward and contact the select board office if they want to be involved with the team. Dartmouth Week did an excellent article, I think you saw it last week, about this
Very nice.
notice, and we're hoping to hear from people to get their input on the history and culture of Dartmouth residents that are Native Americans.
Thank you. Thank you again. Do it again.
Mr. Bigson?
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yeah, just want to add that we are not excluding anybody. You don't have to be just Native American to be involved in this committee. We'll take anybody that be either join or be an ex officio member of the committee. But we also made it a point that we want Dartmouth residents who are Native American descent to join us so we can get that input on a regular basis. So we are trying to be very inclusive, but we're on a mission to find Dartmouth residents who qualify. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tattlebaum. Anyone else? Okay, master plan workshop announcement.
Yes, the planning board is having their final workshop for the development of the master plan. That is going to be December 8th from 6:30 to 8:30 right here in this room in Town Hall. As you know, the master plan is a long-range policy document that guides the community in decision-making. This process has been in place for the last 3 years. Due to COVID, it was delayed a little bit, but the planning board is hoping to wrap up the master plan and approve it, and then present it to the select board for final approval, hopefully by the end of January. So we want to get as many people as possible out to the final workshop to provide their input and comments.
Okay. Any comment on that?
Yeah,
Mr. McDonald?
would it be appropriate for this board to send a letter to the planning board and asking them as part of the master plan final documents that the extension of the sidewalks on Smith Neck Road be included?
Oh, in the master plan? Yeah, I can find out about that and ask them to incorporate it.
Because I can, if you want, I can make a motion that we,
I thought there was.
Well, you don't have to make a motion. You'll have the final review of the
Okay.
document, but I'll ask them to incorporate it.
okay,
The sidewalks on Smith Neck?
yes.
Yeah.
What was termed by the Pathways Committee as the Harbor Walk.
Oh, that's right.
So it is part of it.
It's been
part of the plan,
discussed,
right.
but it needs to be more
Front and center, maybe?
front and center and implemented. I mean, let's put it this way, Smith Neck is a 50-foot, it's a 50-foot walkway, I mean, a 50-foot roadway. The use of adding the sidewalk would not affect any private property, any land takings, because it's well within the town easement. And as everybody knows, the thinner the roads, the slower the traffic has a tendency to be, so,
And they go pretty fast down there.
yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yeah, that issue certainly is on it's on the harbor master plan, and I think it was duly noted that it should be pushed up the ladder in terms of priority. But I guess what you're asking, Sean, is to hopefully add it to the master plan so it becomes part of the kind of a dual priority.
Correct.
For the town.
I think everybody's on board with that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. License renewals. All are subject to, excuse me, police chief, fire chief, director of inspectional services approval. First up, restaurant, all alcoholic, common vic, Texas Roadhouse, the Black Bass Grill.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second.
Roll call.
We need a roll call vote. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. Okay. All alcohol restaurant, common vic, amusements, devices, jukebox, pool table, entertainment with alcohol. The King's Inn.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. Motion passes. Club All Alcoholic Common Vic, Stackhouse Fairgrounds.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. Motion approved. Club All Alcoholic Amusement Devices, Pool Tables, Jukebox, Entertainment with Alcohol, VFW Memorial Post.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. Motion approved. Packaged Goods Store, All Alcoholic, Cardoza's Wine and Spirits, CV Variety, Dartmouth Wine and Spirits, Lizzie's Liquors, Town Liquors.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. And lastly, we have Packaged Goods Store, Wine and Malt Beverages, Bliss Express, CNS Variety, Farm and Coast Market, and Shaw's.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes. All right, so that gets that done. Town Administrator update.
Yes,
You
so.
must be the town administrator.
I am, for tonight, yeah. Under our planning, you heard me mention the final master plan workshop. One thing I did not mention is if people want to review the draft master plan, they can go right to our website, and that will link them to the planning page, which goes to SERPED for the review of the draft. One thing we've put together internally is a community services outreach team in light of the homeless situation that seems to be on the rise statewide and also here in Dartmouth. The team consists of members of the COA, the Veteran Services Office, the Youth Advocate, Board of Health, Police, Building, and the Town Administrator's Office. I'm going to have them come in at a future meeting to talk about what they're doing and what their plan of action is. It's a great team working on a very significant issue here in town. Under energy, Cody was here to talk about the energy aggregation update. I can't stress enough how important this contract, energy aggregation contract, has been for the town. I mean, he said the current Eversource rate, the Eversource rate in January of 23 is going to go to 25.65 cents per kilowatt hour, and Dartmouth's at 10.47. So that's he mentioned the huge savings for the town, and it can't be said enough that what a great contract that's been. Also, the North Branch Library has solar on the roof, and that's new. That's been in place for a year now. Cody provided some numbers last week. So last September, the library used 11,500 kilowatt hours. This September, they used 37 net. October was 10,440 last year, and this year it's 26. So you can see with our green communities and trying to implement as many energy efficiency programs as possible, there is a huge savings to the town. So it really needs to be noted that we're really making an effort to save money for the residents. We received another opioid payment, $160,984. That's will be voted on at Springtown meeting to go into the opioid stabilization fund. The Department of Public Works has received a Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant in the amount of $30,600 because of their recycling program. And then some holiday notices. So the Council on Aging had a Thanksgiving luncheon on the 17th. I attended it. It was a very well-organized and well-attended event. They had over 100 guests. Amy and the crew at the Council on Aging did an excellent job. And this weekend, Sunday, December 4th, is the Town Hall tree lighting from 4:30 to 5:30 at the Town Hall. So we hope to see everybody there.
We need a big crowd like we always get.
Grinch, is the Grinch showing up?
Is the
I
what?
mean, the Grinch, I'm sorry, are you showing up?
I'll be there lighting, I'll be the one to light the tree, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I'll wear my outfit.
You gonna be green?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna,
Be green.
yeah, be green or be mean. I'll be Mr. McDonald. Green.
Oh, I'm happy kind of guy. Except when it comes to state DEP and
Well-
regulations.
I know how to get under your skin.
I know you don't.
With that, no. Mention DEP. All right, we got, oh, I'm sorry.
That was it, yes.
So we have, let's see,
Old business.
Old business.
old business.
Yes,
Yep.
Bliss Corner, no updates, Norworth Lake Nokichoke, and the Municipal Broadband Committee, we're finalizing the draft of the RFP for the Municipal Broadband Study. We hope to have that done the next week or so.
Okay, select board updates.
I have something interesting.
Good. Mr. McDonald.
A few years ago, Commonwealth of Massachusetts passed a law where any municipality, depending upon the size of the municipality, can authorize an individual to ticket cars parked in handicapped spaces throughout its own municipal boundaries. I'm wondering if there is an appetite for us and also the police department to seek an individual who would be willing to do this. Basically, pro bono, maybe a little stipend, gas money, something. Because the money that is generated from ticketing people parked in handicapped spaces, I guess 50 goes to the community. But the money for that is specifically targeted for people with disabilities. It goes to a special fund for that type of thing. So I'm wondering, you know, I guess the common thing is that, you know, people with handicap stickers get the bus parking spaces, but there's a reason for that. And I've noticed here and there, people just parking because, well, they're only gonna be a few minutes, or, you know, they just need to go in here and, you know, then somebody drives up who actually needs the place, can't park there, have to go somewhere else. I know the police department have better things to do than to go around ticketing people, especially something like this. So I'm wondering if we have an appetite. So I'm wondering if we can, I have the law at my office. I'll send it over to everybody. And maybe I'll do it in an email, and I'll include Chief Levekian on it to see if there's an appetite on doing this.
One thing we do to the traffic supervisors, who you see out here directing traffic during school, like beginning and the end of the day, they do the ticketing as well. So they do it in the summer, and then when school's not in session, I know, I can check with the chief, they do it at other times as well, so they're out there.
So do we have any numbers? How many tickets they've issued?
Oh, yes, I mean.
Can we get that?
Yeah, we can.
Because I'll tell you this, and I was in Fall River by accident, because I work in Fall River, but that new mall with the supermarket. I noticed this guy, he drove in a regular car, it wasn't a police car, he got out, he had a police officer's uniform on. And I watched him walking around, looking at every car that's parked in these handicapped spots. So he came back to his car, and I got out of my car and went over and introduced myself. Fall River has 3 full-time police staff that do nothing but monitor handicap parking violations. 3 full-timers. Now, I don't, they have a much larger force than we do. I understand that, but nonetheless, they put their money where their mouth is and did that. And they're elderly guys, probably right near retirement, and it's perfect for them. But your suggestion, I really like the idea, but the thing that bothers me is if they're going to do it pro bono or whatever, what happens if they get hurt on the job?
That's one of the things you gotta vet out.
If somebody goes wacky because you ticketed the car and he drives over his foot or whatever, somebody throws a punch at one of these people. People are irrational, as we all know, and it's getting worse. That's the only thing that bothers me about your suggestion. I'm frightened to death that the town would be involved in a huge lawsuit and responsible.
Well, that's why I want to bring the chief in and
medical
and see what
I'd rather have one
see
of
what they can do and just to see what other towns have done. Municipalities have done, whether or not they've taken advantage of this.
That's my pet
whatnot.
peeve,
Yeah,
without a doubt. You know that. We've talked about it many times, and it just drives me crazy that if you mention something to a driver, especially a young person, say, what are you doing here? None of your business. Get away from me.
I take a little bit different tack. Sometimes, once in a while, I'll see somebody do that. I will never tell them, hey, where's your sticker? I will say, hey, maybe you should put your sticker up because there are police officers that come in here, and if they see you without a sticker, they may ticket you. I tell them that way they know somebody knows, but not telling them, to go ahead and do it because you have to couch it sometimes a little different.
They get irrational.
Not the way that I really would like to tell them is like, hey,
get the hell out of here.
But
it
Mr.
does.
Chairman?
Sorry. Oh, Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yeah, I think it's I think you're right about we have to be an employee of the town, and I think it's a numbers game that looking at the potential for writing tickets and how many we can write, because there's an awful lot of how many handicap spaces there are, and it's really in the concentrated area. So it might work to actually employ somebody, and that's what they do, and do it at the times of the day when it's busiest, because I think these people should be punished.
Yeah.
And but it has to be qualified by someone who is trained and also an employee to make sure that we are covered as a town.
Well, I think
the chief's the first place to go. Yeah.
I mean, if they become an agent of the town, which automatically affords them some protection. But yeah, I fully understand, Mr. Mickelson's concerns about, retribution and what happens if somebody becomes total.
Mr. Carrero, are you the traffic court officer?
So I'm under the statute, under the agreement they had with the treasurer. I'm the hearings officer for the handicap parking, and I'll have to say that doing it for the last 2 years, Greg was doing it, and then I took it over. The enforcement in town is pretty well. You'll have on occasion people will argue the ticket, and but we stay consistent in what we do. We don't want to make it a fact that we waive one ticket for one and then we give a break on someone else. So we do see a lot of handicap, especially around the mall. The mall has tightened up a lot of their parking area. They've repaved and relined, especially around the building with the fire lanes. So we do still see a little bit of traffic in there, and on occasion we do get a lot of payments in for handicap. In fiscal 22, we collected about $19,000 in just handicap fines. And in fiscal 22 was about $24,000. Fiscal 23, we're up to about $19,000. So we're going to be almost benchmark of what we collected in fiscal 22. And Sean is right. Once they alleviate from parking, doing the directing traffic here, the chief then has them go out and around town.
That's
so
great.
Yeah, it's a robust. They really do find them when they're
It's not
in
about
violation.
finances. It's not about the finances.
No, it's
about doing the right thing.
Right, and it's about getting these folks to know that. And a lot of times these folks are not Dartmouth residents. So it's getting them to know that it's illegal to park in these spots. And the town could charge up to $500, but the town back, I believe, about 10 years ago, voted to adopt a $250 violation instead of going to the max. So when I do the hearings, I try to educate them. They can come in. They can also appeal it with the New Bedford Superior Court if they have that, if they like to do that. But that additionally, that costs another $200 to do that. So they just pay the violation, and then hopefully we don't see them again.
I mean, I'm not looking it to be as a revenue source, that's.
Right, no.
Exactly.
It's a learning.
It's
You're
doing the
right.
right thing.
Correct.
You know, somebody, I mean, there's a reason why they're there.
Right.
You know?
And that's kind of what I educate them when they come in and they present with the violation, so.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Now we know the real numbers. Okay, anything else? Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
yes.
Mr. Mickelson, yes.
Nice job, Mr. Mickelson.